The North Platte Bulletin is celebrating a big milestone.
We're celebrating on the 12th, which is Wednesday, which is pretty close. And when we set that date, that was the closest publication date we had to the first date of publication.
Lincoln County's independent news magazine has been in business for 20 years.
We got a lot of advertisers who bought congratulations ads, and we're doing memories from some of the founding people and some of the employees that worked along the way. And we're doing favorite memories from members of the community. And we're doing just kind of the history, how we got started, where we've been, and what we've done. We'll have some front page pictures that we've run over the years that made a big impact. And so that sort of stuff. I'm working on it now. It's all kind of coming together. We'll also have some news from today, too, and tomorrow, probably. So.
Sorry, I'm trying to move this. You know Joby.
I have to get permission from the publisher to come down the stairs. Quite a journey. We started, with just a dream of having our own newspaper. And, we'd come up through newspapers, and I think everybody that does it kind of has a dream to do your own thing and your own way. And it's kind of the American dream, So we just took a stab at it. We had a guy, Frank Graham, that started it, and really the driving force. He had all the energy for it, and he said, we're just going to roll it out. We're just going to roll it out and see what happens. And here we are, 20 years later. We had a good staff. We had really good, experienced people. And there were about 4 of us that were, we thought we knew what we were doing anyway. And between the 4 of us, we could figure stuff out. And that helped a lot, but we really just dove in, just gave it a try. And subscriptions took off when we started selling. First we gave it away, and then subscriptions took off, and then we had to deal with a whole bunch of that stuff. It's just every time we turned around for about a year, we had something new to deal with and figure out, and we're still putting the paper out. And a website. We had a website from day one. I was talking to the programmer the other day, and he started it all, and he said the same thing. He said, we didn't have a lot of money. He said, this guy was really good. He says, we didn't have money for software, so I just built a system. So he built our administrative system, and we're still using part of it 20 years later. And he was a programmer. He knew what he was doing, but that was the attitude, let's just dive in and bring our skills and see what happens. And I remember telling him I'd give it 6 months of my time, and if it wasn't going anywhere, then I'd go find something else. And so I'm the sole survivor actively, but we've had a good time. It's been quite an adventure. Still is. Joanna, she bosses us around. And this is her mother, Kate, and Kate is our graphic artist.
Yes, usually it's pretty busy. Have to answer the phones and make the ads and everything, and make sure that everything's running well on the website. So
and design the ads.
And design the ads, of course. Been here for a year.
What do you think?
I love it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I get a chance to do what I love to do, and I get to raise my daughter here, so
yeah,
it's perfect.
Yeah, we're raising a little girl, and it's just a lot of fun too.
So she's going to grow up and probably be in the newspaper business.
Well, she's already
She
bossing
might
us
be.
around.
Yeah.
Say hi.
Hi.
There you go. Joey's dad has been great too about this. He's a real good guy. We appreciate him a lot too. Appreciate him sharing his daughter a little bit with us. And, yeah. We're all happy here. Even Joey seems to be happy here.
Kat Tedder has been with the North Platte Bulletin since August 3rd, 2022.
So I come in, I check my email, I look at my calendar, see what advertisers I need to get a hold of, and I go out and I talk to people, and I get to meet people, which is really good, and find out what they do, and especially with the local businesses around here, I really get to know those people, and I find out what they're passionate about, and that's probably the best part.
I see you out reporting.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
I really enjoy that as well. I learn a lot. I'm in tune with the community, and that makes me feel like part of the community. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, so I'm far from home, but this is my home. So
How did you find George and the Bulletin?
A friend of ours.
Mutual friend?
Yeah.
Mutual.
So she knew I was leaving my old job and said that he was looking for someone to sell advertising, and it's in my blood. My mom has sold advertising for almost 40 years.
Newspaper advertising.
Newspaper advertising. Yeah.
So George is celebrating 20 years. How does it feel to be a part of that?
It feels great. I love the fact that we focus on local news and that I love how much George cares about the community.
What are your plans for the next 20 years?
Well, I expect we'll take them a day at a time like we have the last 20 years. We'll see what the news is when we start the day or as we end the day, and we'll report it. And I think there'll always be a need for somebody to do that and professionals to do that.
It's impossible to have a favorite story after 20 years of writing, but he has some memories that stick out in his mind.
One that is kind of a wholesome article was a ranch up here that was handled by branding, and I went up and stayed with them on the branding, and they had the morning we got up to go round the cattle up, it was fog set in, and it couldn't see through the hills. So they had this big crew of cowboys, and I had an airplane, but it was all grounded until the fog lifted. So I was sitting around there and everybody was kind of bored, and I thought, this is a part of branding that people don't get. And they have an old saying that if the fogs comes in by 7, it'll go out by 11 in the morning. And he said, one guy says, I'd never known it to be wrong. And frankly, I think it was about 11:30 or 11:45 that morning, but the fog lifted. And it didn't lift completely, but it lifted enough to raise up out of the canyon so we could start to see cattle in the distance and round them up. And that was a big deal for me to be part of that. Then it was so moist that morning that the moisture gathered on the brims of the cowboy hats, and it kind of dripped off down towards their boots. It was and I wrote a story and I won an award for that, and that was a real meaningful one. We've had others. There was, terrible accidents we covered. One was a semi wreck, and we covered it, and it was so well that it was circulated widely amongst truck drivers, and then I think it was the state of Tennessee called us, and they wanted copyright permission, and they wanted to inform us that they were going to use that in their training films about how to respond to a livestock accident. It was livestock, and so that was heartening. We did another series of stories on the use of prescription pills in schools, and that was inserted into a textbook in University of California for their nurses programs. And then in fact they did an update and a revision of it, and they kept it in there. And so we actually made a little royalty money off of that. So those were biggest ones that come to mind. But every story is important to somebody. It might be the guy down the road, it might be the kid up the block, or it might be on a grander scale, but it's important no matter what you do. And I just try to be accurate. We really stress trying to be accurate. We're not perfect, and we make some mistakes like any human would, but we do our best to be accurate about it and fair to both sides, not take a lot of opinions, not try to slant it. We just want to tell people what's going on. So
He is happy to be celebrating 20 years as a journalist in North Platte, Nebraska.
I love this town. I love this town since I was a kid. I used to come up here on vacations or little getaways for the weekend, because I grew up on a farm in Lexington, and this was a good-sized city to me. This was a really fascinating place to go, and it still is. I always thought this is a little more west than if you go to Kearney, for instance, or go that direction. There's a little more western flavor out here. People a little more self-reliant, a little more independent, a little more outspoken, a little more true to themselves, and but they're really helpful. And when a pinch is on and somebody's pinched, that people want to help, which is kind of, to me, is the ethics of the Western pioneers, and I think it's still exemplified here. And yeah, I love this town, and it's a small city, I call it. It's got a lot going on. If you ever want to cover news, there's plenty of stuff going on, as you know, and but it's not overwhelming. And you can learn to get to know people and to remember them and establish working relationships a lot easier than you could in the city. And even like, Music on the Bricks has been a real fun thing to do and develop. And, you don't get the chance to develop something like that in a bigger city because you're stepping on toes or you don't know who to talk to or there's too much paperwork or whatever. So here you can just work with good people who want to see good things happen. Yeah, I think people in North Platte are great, and I love it here. Can we be better? Sure. Do we want to be better? Sure. I think we do. We got to figure out how. That's always the hard part. And then once you figure out how, you got to execute it. That's always the hard part. There's no lack of will or desire to make a better town on anybody's part. So hopefully we're contributing to that effort.
I'm proud to say I've known George for over 25 years. He was my first newspaper editor long ago.
Well, thank you for coming over. You're kind of independent too. And I was with you not long after I got on my journalism journey. You came in and worked with us and worked with me for quite a while. You really had a lot of fire, and I remember that. And that's what it takes. You got to have fire. Every day you run into a challenge that you just have to figure out a way to get around. And some of them are big and some of them are little, and then you got to put out a story all the time, as you know. There's a famous story about, other newspapers, they break a big story in New York, and I think the Washington Post is who I'm thinking about, and I think it was with Nixon's resignation and all that stuff that went down for that. And they asked Ben Bradley, the publisher, said, well, how did it feel? Did you all go celebrate? He says, heck no, we had to put another paper the next day. So we just kept gathering the news. It's just another day. And that's the way it is. You get something done and, you got to do this now. But it's kind of like trying to get your arms around life and then put it in a publication, publishable form. And that's an adventure, and it's a feeling of accomplishment when you do it. Plus, you just get exposed to all the things about life. It's a wondrous thing, and life is amazing. So you're constantly amazed and entertained by it, and constantly work with it. Just trying to do a good job at what I do, and I think we all do. I think everybody does. And if we encourage each other and respect each other for that, we got a good community.
Congratulations to the North Platte Bulletin on their 20th anniversary. Reporting from North Platte, I'm Melanie Standiford, Midwest Media by Melanie.